This episode of the Athletes Lounge podcast is brought to you by the Nub Cut. I'm Hunter Wade at the Athletes Lounge podcast. I'm here with my guest.
This is Mark Kirkman, North Posey High School.
So, Coach, where are you guys? You're of North Posey baseball, and where are you guys? At this point in your season, I think it's a little bit, I guess, premature for like real practices. But is it? So, what are you guys working on at this point?
I mean, we try to make it as realistic as possible. I know we're not every day, but in a lot of ways, it feels like we're in normal practice. I mean, about a week and a half ago, when we had a pretty nice day, we went out and on a day we were going to throw bullpens anyway. We went live. We let guys get live at bats in. I think it was like February 7th or something like that. So when it's a good weather day, we get after it, and we're fortunate too. We're one of the first schools in the area that we have a nice indoor hitting facility. We're really blessed when it comes to that kind of stuff. We got a hit track system a few years ago that allows our guys to really see where they're at. It's pretty legit what we got.
What do you? I guess right now. What do you try to work on the most if you can? Is there something that you want to focus on more than maybe something else, or what's your biggest, I guess, goal at this point in the season?
So like right now, especially we got most of our guys, and we try and just get as many reps as we can, try to maximize our time, and then we each year, each off season, we kind of have a specific thing we really try and hammer home. We This year our big thing, like our strikeout numbers were just way too high last year. If we want to really try and take the next step, that I think we can. So that's something we've really been trying to implement within our indoor work, especially trying to put guys in two strike situations and just trying to develop that mindset of trying to cut down on strikeouts as much as we can.
I guess what's your background in baseball? How did you end up here being a coach?
So I graduated from Wrights in '04. Played at Oakland City after that. Was a fifth year GA in the spring of '09, and then I actually interviewed for the Wrights job. It came open that fall. I was only 23 and didn't get it. And then the guy who did, Robin Courtney, who I had no previous relationship with. I knew I wanted to get into coaching, and I was a teacher, and I just reached out to him kind of out of the blue and got his email and emailed him. And then, he asked me to help on his varsity staff. And I tell you, that was about the biggest blessing that could happen to me. He was a big mentor of mine, still is. He's actually mentored a few guys around the area. I know Jeremy Jones at North is a Courtney guy. And, I was there for 3 years. And then I interviewed for the modern day varsity job, was offered the JV job. And so I went ahead and I took that. So my first spring there was the spring of 2013, and I was the JV coach there for 7 years. And then I'd always wanted to be a head coach, and it's something I always wanted to try. And the North Posey job came open in the fall of '19, and then I interviewed for that and was offered that in the fall of '19.
So, going into this, that first year you kind of had wiped out with the COVID year. What has, I guess, been your biggest adjustment to being a head coach here at North Posey?
Oh, man, I thought I knew everything. I knew nothing when it came to being a head coach. And I'm probably like a lot of young guys whenever they first get their first opportunity. And the biggest change for me isn't necessarily the coach. I guess part of it is, I had never questioned myself on decisions I made until I became a head coach. And the decisions, ultimately the buck stops with you. And so that was different for me, especially my first year. But I'd say the biggest thing for me has been everything outside of coaching. Fundraising, managing your budget, uniforms, things like that. There's really no how to on that, and it's just something you just kind of develop as you go. And in a sport like baseball, that's outside. It requires a lot of maintenance with your facilities. it is always something. And I heard a great line about a year ago and talked about how you had to embrace the 95% of that to enjoy the five, which is actually coaching the team. And that's been a huge adjustment for me. I'm really fortunate. I have a great coaching staff that chips in so many ways. For none of us are paid well, but those guys especially. The amount of things they do on the field, fundraising wise, it's incredible. I don't know how I would manage it without them, to be honest with you.
So, was there any adjustment now to, I guess, was there any big adjustment to, I guess, some of the rule changes that can happen in baseball, or any like, I guess, how the kids have changed over the years? Has there been any adjustment to that part, or do you think you've kept up with that part pretty well?
Yeah, so the rule changes, like pitch clock and that kind of stuff. That's not in the high school
Yeah, not yet,
level.
no.
I think it might be eventually, but it's not at our level. So rules wise, we don't have a ton that's different from whenever I was a player 20 years ago. But players are different, and
Yeah.
one thing, and admittedly, I'm an old school guy. But one thing I've learned from just talking to older coaches in the area, guys that are successful. One thing I've tried to learn is you are who you are, and don't try and be somebody you're not. And I've tried. Whenever I first started, and I wasn't real sure of myself. That was hard at times. But now that I kind of feel like I'm in a little bit of a groove with the culture we have, that's something I feel like has really come a long way. As far as the players, I, people my age, we love to complain about kids these days, right, and that kind of stuff. And I kind of get frustrated with it at times. It is different, but I've tried to find a happy medium with it. Like um, I remember my first year. When I first started, I was a big, no jewelry, the white cleats, no way, that kind of stuff. And then those guys, it kind of convinced me that the white cleats I've just learned, pick your battles. And one thing I feel like with my kids that we have a pretty good understanding what kind of the way we do it. It's unspoken, as long as these kids play and practice hard, I can deal with some stuff. Game's different too in that you watch a college game and the celebrations and that kind of stuff. And I tell our guys, you know, as long as it's not blatant, as long as it's not, especially as long as it's not directed at the other team, I can live with some stuff. Um, say this spring, actually, interesting story. I was very anti walk up songs, with these guys, and because I'm to the age now where I don't know what these songs are anymore. So um, I was kind of against that, but I got one of my players. He's a big Louisville fan. You can see behind me, we're big Notre Dame people here, and he got a hold of me that week, and he said, "Hey, if Louisville wins, can we get walk up songs?" Well, Notre Dame, I think was like a touchdown favorite, and I said, "Okay," so well, of course, Louisville did win, so I got to hold to it, and so that'll be something different this year. So I think you got to find a happy medium, and you do have to try and figure out how to communicate to these kids, and because they're part of the society they grow up in, right? And the way when we were younger, we would watch a 2 hour game. Well, these guys, they don't. That's not how they consume information, right? They consume it in small, short doses, and so we have to adjust to that as a staff and as a program to try and put them in the best position to be successful.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how is it, how, uh, how much film can you realistically watch, or how much baseball can you realistically expect your kids to watch?
I mean, what we do. So I mentioned before we started recording here. We have a hit track system, and part of our system is a high res camera. So
Yeah.
we try and use our high res camera as much as we can. We will film, in game stuff, uh, But as far as like actual film work, like a football program does, not a ton. And what I try and do too, like in the off season, I actually stole this from Coach Jones at North. We'll do some classroom sessions, and I'll have short clips for these guys. Stuff that's big for me, but situational stuff. And
Yeah.
that's one thing we're going to try this year, especially try and keep that up during the season too. Try and have some classroom type stuff before we get onto the practice field. Just let them see it before we try and put it into actual motion in a live setting on the practice field.
How many at this point, what's the goal in your mind for the season? Like, is it like win a sectional, go on a, winning record? What is your goal heading into the season right now?
I tell you, we don't really set you know concrete goals like because I feel like baseball in general, especially high school baseball, it's so fickle, and
Yeah.
I think the way we measure success is more than just wins and losses, I guess. And so, like in our program, we don't really talk about rules. We talk about standards and things that's what we do, right? Like there's no other option. It's just what we do, right? That we just meet the standards. And and I preach to them all the time about there are days where I mean we play really good baseball and we get beat 4-3. And it just happens. This is the way the game is, right? And then there are days we don't play well and we win 6-2.
Yeah.
You know, so we don't necessarily like last year's group. I'll be honest with you, I have really enjoyed all three of my seasons at Fort Posey. Last year's group was a lot of fun because early in the year uh, we got upset by a team early in the year, and we were young, really young last year, and I thought, man, I don't know, like this thing can go off the rails, and I mean that team came together, and we were rolling down the stretch. We got hot in the sectional, we got in the sectional final, and we couldn't hit in the final, and it was
Yeah.
just baseball's a weird game, and I don't consider that team even the slightest failure. In my mind, they were an extremely successful group. Now, we didn't win a conference championship. We didn't win a sectional championship. But in my mind, and obviously, we're competitors. Like
Yeah.
we're playing to win. There's no doubt about it. But I also think like it's important to keep in mind that especially in our format where 7 inning single elimination baseball, there is weird stuff that happens.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those deals. And so, the way I look at it is, if we put ourselves in the best position we can, right, then we've done our job. And if the chips fall our way, hey, that's great. And if they don't, hey man, that's just how it goes sometimes.
Great hair doesn't happen by chance, it happens by appointment. Call 812-457-6360 to schedule yours today.
The kind of being this, I guess, far into your tenure, have you been impressed with, I guess, your groups you've had so far? And was this not easier than you thought it would? Did you enjoy this more? Are you enjoying this more right now than when you took it? Or is this the job, or is this like kind of like what you expected it to be?
So, full disclosure, my first year, the expectation was a sectional at minimum. That team was they were coming off back to back sectionals. They had a bunch of guys back. We were very talented. We had 4 guys sign college scholarships, and those dudes were some serious competitors. I'll be honest with you, when we won that sectional against Forest Park in the final, I was more relieved than excited, if I'm being honest with you, because here's this guy. I'm not from North Posey. I'm not originally from there. I don't really have any connections to the area, and they don't know who I am. And here I am. I'm coming in. I got lucky in a good job and with a good group. And like I said, that was. And look, now don't get me wrong. Looking back, man, we had a lot of fun. Man, we won a lot of games in those twos. Like I said, they were some serious competitors, and they were fun to be around at times. A lot of times actually. Um, but now I do feel like I'm a little more sure of myself, if that makes sense. And there are still times where I question things that I do every once in a while, and especially when it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
But I do feel like I got just a pretty good handle on our program, and this year too, we're I mentioned last year we had a lot of young guys, and well, all those guys are back, and we it's kind of a unique thing this year where at a school our size, a lot of years you have some sophomores and maybe even some freshmen who are regulars for you, just because your numbers aren't great,
Yeah.
and a lot of times those guys might not be ready. Well, this year's a little unique where I think we're going to be pretty old in a lot of spots. Um, and these guys, they're talented and they're extremely coachable. And I think they've really bought in. And of course, that takes some time, right? And I'm not saying my way's the right way or whatever, but it's just one of those deals where it takes a couple years for guys to get used to me. I mean, we got I have a senior he's been starting since about halfway through his freshman year. I have two juniors that have been starters basically since day one their freshman year. So I've got some guys that have been around me at the varsity level for a lot of games and a lot of practices, and it's nice when your better players, your all conference guys, are you're also your best leaders. I think, and I'm pretty sure that's who we're going to be this year. And of course, you never know how the season's going to shake out, but I do think this spring is going to be a lot of fun with these guys.
Do you prefer to get would you prefer to be starting sophomores and freshmen where you have more years with them, or do you prefer when your team is mostly older?
Depends on how it's going, right?
Yeah.
Like early last year when there was a night at Heritage Hills. I think at one point, I don't remember. I think we had 5 sophomores on the field, and there's some rough stretches. You just got to get through it. But when you're old, that's nice because especially when you're old and experienced, that
Yeah.
then those dudes have been through it, and um, that's a good thing to have. And I'm hoping this year that's kind of where we're at. I wouldn't, I don't really look at too many statistics from the years past. Things usually I just look at stuff I think we need to develop within the program. But I was just curious because we got so many guys that have played a lot of baseball, and I don't remember the exact number, but we return. I want to say it's like 1,100 career plate appearances as a program. It's a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to be experienced. I think this offense has got a shot to be pretty deep. I think our biggest question marks will be on the mound. We had a guy last year, Aiden Collins. He's at Quincy now, the left-handed arm, and he was a shutdown arm. And that's a nice thing to have at the high school level. And we got some guys that are going to go out there compete. I'd say that, but we're not super proven on the mound right now, and that's always a little scary, especially early in the year. Whenever we try and limit pitch counts as much as we can early in the year when these guys are just getting their feet under them.
So that's really all I guess have prepared question wise. Is there anyone you want to shout out? Any staff you want to mention? Anyone that deserves a mention?
Yeah, so there's a lot of them. That's a good thing to have, good problem to have. I'm really fortunate to work for an AD and a principal, Waylon Shank and Sean Fisher at North Posey High School, that are extremely supportive. Waylon's our football coach, and actually Mr. Fisher is our defensive coordinator. So they're both coaches. So they understand, things that you might be dealing with, and that's always nice. And as I mentioned, my staff, when I left Mater Dei, I took my JV assistant with me, Isaac Adler, young guy. He was the only guy that went with me, and I'm fortunate. I have my other 4 assistant coaches are our North Posey holdovers that I had no previous relationship with at all. They didn't know me at all. I didn't know them, and I tell you, I couldn't be, any more happy with the staff I have, and I think we have a nice balance where they're certainly not afraid to challenge me. I'll tell you that. Now they realize at the end of the day, it's going to be my decision, but I think we have a nice balance of, they are certainly free to speak their minds, and there are plenty of times where I think one way, and after we talk about it as a staff, we go a different way. That's nice to have because that was another thing I noticed, when I became a head coach, I was an assistant, I typically would just focus on my position group or whatever, and that was about it. That's different as the head guy, right? And so, it's nice to have a lot of good eyes and ears on your staff. And then I also the last people I want to just give a little shout out to are my players. We go 4 days a week. These guys, we're one of our few programs at our school, like on spring break, we don't take a day off. And actually, we're going down to Tennessee for 3 games this spring break. We'll see how that goes. First time we've ever tried it, so but man, these guys don't miss, and that's I make the season long, I guess. Whenever we're basically 4 days a week from January on, hopefully playing through mid to late June. But they don't miss. I don't hear complaining. These guys too. I'm fortunate too in our school where the weight program is a big deal for us, and I think it's been a little bit of an advantage for us as a baseball program. And consistently, our strength coaches tell me that our baseball guys are some of the hardest workers down there, and it shows. And it really contributes to our culture and just who we are. And it makes them. And honestly, at the end of the day, like as a high school coach, just seeing the guys develop from where they were and learning to compete, that's what makes it fun, right? And obviously the wins and losses are big too, but and just building those relationships with those guys. I mentioned Collins. I got a text from him the other day before their first game, and that's the cool part is seeing that, right? As they've left your program, and hopefully you made a little bit of impact on them.
Well, like I said, that's really all I got. I've been Hunter Wade at the Athletes Lounge podcast, and thanks for doing this, Coach.
Hey, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Hunter with the Athletes Lounge podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe where you can. Thanks.